Hey Steve, whatever happened to baby jet lag?
Well, whatever happened? Here's what's happening with the jet lag drug. Now, you remember recently I spoke about the drug Hetlioz,
Hmm.
tasimelton. It's a melatonin analog, and they were suing the FDA because they couldn't talk about jet lag. Well, it seems Vanda Pharmaceuticals is also suing generic manufacturers. So we have companies that do generics, so Teva and Apotex are two companies that manufacture generic versions of Hetlioz, and they're basically being told to stop by Vanda Pharmaceuticals. So it's interesting if you know. So, for example, when a drug is new, it has patent protection and no one else can manufacture it. So
Hmm.
I had this experience, for example, I worked on the Viagra clinical trials back in the late 90s. And for I think at least 15 years, no one else could manufacture Viagra. Now we're well past that. And now any company with a manufacturing license can manufacture Viagra. And they frequently do. So in Australia, for example, we have Sigma Pharmaceuticals. I used to work for Sigma, and they manufacture and import all sorts of things that are not on patent. So it's an issue of patent protection here. Um, so I'm following with interest. I don't have any conflict of interest in this. I'm just watching with interest, shall we say, seeing how this court proceeding between Vanda and Apotex, which is a Canadian company, and Teva, which is an Israeli company, is going.
So it's a little bit like does that mean that in the early stage for a medication that they have a period of time that there's a sole ownership of the
That's
rights?
exactly right. That's exactly what that is. So, for example, I think Ozempic might still be under patent.
Mhm.
So, someone can't whip up some Ozempic in a lab and sell it off. Down the track, it will be off patent, and then all the contract manufacturers. I mean, there are standards they have to abide to. And in Australia, the Therapeutic Goods Administration, the TGA, can inspect at any time, and they do, just to make sure that they're, doing everything according to good manufacturing practice, the code of good manufacturing practice. So, and especially with anything injectable, there's that extra
Mhm.
precaution because it has to be sterile, it has to be free from contaminants, all that sort of thing.
Well,
So,
it's actually very important because if numbers of manufacturers jump into producing the same thing or similar things at the same time, then it sounds a little bit like a Wild West. But if
well, first of
that's
all,
a
there
risk.
is the code of good manufacturing practice. They have to abide by that.
Mm.
Um, but apart from that, yes, it is. Like I said, we had Viagra only, but now there's a whole lot of different brands of Viagra that it's the same thing and
Yeah,
they can manufacture it. They've got, the
certainly do the
various,
same thing.
and I don't know what the companies are, but there's multiple companies that manufacture Viagra equivalent tablets. So,
Wow. Well, watch this space about the
yeah. So I'll keep you
Hetlioz.
posted.
About
Sorry?
did I pronounce it correctly? Hetlioz? Hetlioz?
Hetlioz.
Hetlioz.
I think that's how it's pronounced. Hetlioz.
Well, just
If
watch this
anyone
space.
wants to correct, please correct us in the comments. I'm quite that. And it's Vanda Pharmaceuticals.
There
And
you
they're
go.
a fairly small company. They're not one of the big boys like, Merck or Johnson and Johnson or GlaxoSmithKline. They're one of the smaller ones.
Got to keep an eye out on that one.
Keep
And
an eye
well, let's talk about your new book, not the one that we've been talking about quite a bit.
out. The other one. So
Yes.
this one is the colouring in book, and it is due to arrive today. So I don't have, ones to hold up in my hand, unfortunately. If we hear a knock at the door, that's the delivery guy. I thought with the children's colouring in book, if I could create a companion book, same formatting, same text, but kids could colour it in. Now, if you think you've got a long plane flight, let's say you're flying from Sydney to London, which is the story of the book, that's about 20 hours in the air. and children
Mhm.
get bored. Small children get bored. Give them the book, give them some colouring in pencils, and off they go. So you've
And
got a wonderful, you know, you've got the adults have got a book to read with end jet lag. Um, you've got um, something for the kids to read with the children's book, and you've also got a colouring in book.
well, and the best thing is you don't need to plug in power. You won't get
No,
any battery.
you don't need to plug in. So the children's book and the adult book are also available as Kindle, but not the colouring in book because that seems kind of pointless. Unless you want to
Whoa.
color in your computer and then wipe it off at the end.
Oh gosh, yeah, that would be weird. Well,
Yeah.
now I'm going to quote a comedian, and then you gotta tell me a little bit more about this. So it's an
Oh
Australian
dear.
comedian, and in her act, she would go, touch the trolley and walk to the
Oh,
curtain and touch the trolley, touch the curtain, pretend that I give a fuck. What am I talking about, Steve?
well, Pam Ann. And I've seen Pam Ann live. She's great.
I love her.
Well, let me introduce. Now, RuPaul's Drag Race is on to season 317,891.
Yeah,
No, I'm just joking. But, they've
she was
had,
like that.
well, they've had amazing success. Like,
Mm.
beyond what they could have imagined, beyond what anyone would have imagined. I'm so happy for them. And they've really, I think, not just had success with TV, but they've rejuvenated drag.
Mm.
And I think drag queens have been very kind to me in marketing. I get them to put on the jet lag goggles, and they never say no.
There you
They're up for
go.
being on the socials with a pair of jet lag goggles. So here's an idea I came up with, right? Let's say you start in London,
Mm.
right? They perform at a venue in London, say Heaven or somewhere, I don't know. You get a whole lot. Then one queen gets eliminated. Then they go across the channel to Paris. And the next day they perform. There's a contest. One queen gets eliminated. The next day they go off. They get an overnight bus to Berlin. They perform. One queen gets eliminated. Then it's a long distance flight. They fly from Berlin across to Bangkok. They have one night in Bangkok. The world's your oyster. They do a perform. They do a final. One queen gets eliminated. Jump on a plane and you come to Perth. Do the same thing, and you keep going around the world. Perth, Sydney, and you don't have to go to America. If you're a bit worried about, it, you could go via Canada. Whether you go San Francisco, New York, or you could go
Yep.
Vancouver, Toronto. I mean, but you go around the world. Um, instead of and you add the jet lag to the stress that the drag queens are under. So they not only have to perform, but they're lip syncing for their life while with a head full of jet lag. So I'm calling it RuPaul's jet lag race. And on the flights, and there'll be a lot of flights, I want our favourite rude stewardess. I want Pam Ann.
Oh
So I'm
yeah.
putting it out there. I'm putting it out there. RuPaul's jet lag race. Me on there advising them on jet lag. Pam Ann on there we could be judges. Can you
I mean, I,
imagine
what are we
being
going
a
to be
judge
in
with
drag?
Pam Ann on RuPaul's jet lag race? That would be fun.
Would you go? Would you be in drag then?
No, I wouldn't be in drag because I don't want to upstage them. I just want to be the judge. I'd glam up. I'd absolutely glam up because I think you should, dress for the. So
Oh yeah.
it wouldn't be business. I'd be wearing a bit of glitter, a bit of sequins, a bit of colour.
It also sounds a little bit like the TV shows Amazing Race or Race Around the World.
It's
That
kind of
one.
like
Ooh, I
it's
love
the
it.
amazing race in stripper heels.
Oh gosh, it would be. Yep, you can see them losing their mind every.
Yeah, yeah. The amazing race with stripper heels and wigs.
Oh my. Well, that sounds amazing, and it sounds like that we all need to watch this space about all
Yeah.
of
Well,
it.
instead of, balancing bottles on their heads and finding things, they've got to lip sync to Miley Cyrus's Flowers.
Oh gosh, they probably have trouble. Like they'll lose
That's
their
a hard one.
marbles.
I've seen it done. It's a hard
Oh,
one.
they will be losing their marbles before they find the flowers. Well, I mean, in that case, for everyone who's interested in your work and want to find out more about what you do, where can they find
I,
you?
you come to my website, www.jetlagguy.com.au, and I've also got my email address and my phone number on the screen. So that's where you can find me. And all queries, I do workshops, I do one-on-one consulting, I've got a book, I've got children's books, I've got the app, and of course I'm open to ideas with RuPaul's jet lag race if you've got any connections.
We gotta watch this space. Let's watch this space.
And don't
It's
F it up.
exciting.